The story begins inside an operating room during a high-risk surgery. Everything was supposed to go smoothly until the section chief suddenly feels dizzy mid-procedure. His assistant rushes to check on him, but before anyone can react, he collapses straight to the floor. Panic erupts instantly. It turns out the section chief had been operating non-stop for over 24 hours without rest, pushing his body far beyond its limits. But there's no time to process what just happened, because the patient's condition suddenly worsens. The ECG starts spiking violently. The patient goes into convulsions. Someone needs to continue the operation immediately, or the patient will die. But who? They're all just residents, not experienced enough for a procedure of this level. Everyone turns their eyes to the senior resident, but even he hesitates. His hands tremble, because if he takes over and something goes wrong, the responsibility will fall entirely on him. Silence fills the OR. Only the beeping monitor breaks the tension. Then someone steps forward. A young intern. Everyone turns to look at him in disbelief. He shouldn't even be in this position, but he can't stand the thought of watching a patient die in front of him. Still, the weight of reality is crushing. He's just an intern. No authority, no experience, yet he stands firm. The ECG monitor continues screaming. A single delay could be fatal. The intern pleads for guidance, but the pressure is too much for anyone to decide. Then finally, the senior resident makes a decision. Fine, you take over. Shock fills the room. This is an operation an intern should never handle alone. But he is not alone. There is someone else. Ronnie, an advanced AI embedded directly into his brain. The moment the decision is made, the intern's eyes sharpen. Ronnie, activate. In an instant, data floods his mind. Real-time surgical analysis, procedures, probabilities, corrections, everything appears instantly like instinct. What looks like an impossible operation becomes precise execution. In that moment, he is no longer just an intern. He is a surgeon beyond human limits. And Ronnie is guiding every move. This story follows a young man named Jang. After losing his father in a medical negligence incident, he made a promise to himself he would become a doctor. But life didn't wait for his dreams to come true. His mother, who struggled to pay his medical school tuition, suddenly fell ill. Now, Jang has to take responsibility for everything. She's currently under long-term hospice care in a hospital, and the treatment costs are extremely high. Because of this, his younger brother had to move to Australia to work and support the family. That was 3 years ago. Time really flies. Now, Jang takes on any job he can find, especially anything related to medical work or electrical diagnostics, online or offline. If it pays, he does it. Soon, he arrives at a client's residence. It's a massive, futuristic building. Before long, the client appears, and to Jang's surprise, it's someone he knows, a man named Yim-wook. He never expected his client to be his friend. Yim-wook calmly leads him inside. But something feels different about this place. The entire building is integrated with AI. Everything from the structure itself to the security systems. Jang is visibly shocked. A place like this shouldn't even exist. As they go deeper inside, Yim-wook begins introducing him to something he's been working on. A self-aware artificial intelligence project. But what Jang is about to see goes far beyond his imagination. The elevator doors finally open, and there it is. A massive AI core, glowing brightly in a dark room, like a giant artificial brain suspended in space. The scale is unbelievable. It takes up an entire floor. Jang is completely stunned. But then Yim-wook casually reveals something even crazier. This isn't even the final size. They are still expanding it. Jang tries to understand what exactly Yim-wook is building, but Yim-wook simply smiles and tells him not to rush it. Just relax. Let's celebrate first. They crack open drinks and toast casually. But in that moment, something strange happens. Without anyone noticing, a faint electric current begins to travel through Jang's hand, the same hand holding the can. And that is the beginning of a completely different chapter in his life. Yim-wook proudly introduced Jang to his latest creation, an advanced AI system named Alfred. The machine greeted Jang the moment it powered on, and Jang nearly jumped out of his skin. After all, It wasn't every day you saw a giant glowing square talking back to you. Trying to stay polite, he awkwardly bowed and greeted the machine in return. Yoonwook burst into laughter. Clearly, Jang had never met a real AI before. And honestly, the funniest part was its name. Imagine a massive supercomputer named Alfred, though officially, its real name was Ronnie. Without warning, Yoonwook activated Ronnie's emotional analysis program and aimed it directly at Jang. Within seconds, the results appeared. Jang's emotional state was complicated, but one feeling stood out above all others: sadness. Needless to say, Jang wasn't exactly thrilled about having his emotions scanned without permission. To make up for it, Yoonwook moved on to another test. He asked Jang to place his finger on a sensor between them. Jang hesitated, but eventually complied. The instant his finger touched the device, it pricked him and drew blood. Jang immediately panicked, but Yoonwook quickly reassured him it was only collecting a sample to analyze his genes, even checking for things like hair loss risk. But then, a sudden electric surge shot through Jang's finger. In an instant, the current spread throughout his entire body. Jang screamed in pain. The machine shut down, and the room was plunged into darkness. Jang, terrified, wondered if he had somehow broken the incredibly expensive AI, but Yoonwook brushed it off, insisting that a machine this powerful couldn't possibly fail from something as simple as a blood sample. After switching to backup power, the lights returned. Jang's blood analysis appeared on screen, and everything seemed perfectly normal, or so they thought. Yoonwook casually called out to Alfred. No response. He frowned. Maybe the sudden blackout had caused a temporary glitch. Nothing he couldn't fix tomorrow. With the testing finished, the two decided to head out for another drink. Still, as they left, Jang couldn't ignore the strange sensation coursing through his body, but he dismissed it for now. The next morning, Jang woke up like any other day, except something felt different. His vision, it had somehow become sharper, leaving Jang in wonders. Hours later, fully dressed, Jang headed to work. He worked at a cosmetic dermatology clinic, where he specialized in treating skin conditions and facial imperfections. As soon as he walked in, one of the nurses noticed something unusual. Jang wasn't wearing his glasses, and somehow, he looked even better without them. The nurse couldn't help but blush. Before long, Jang was attending to his first patient, a client suffering from extremely dry skin and excessive sebum production. After examining the condition, he prepared to begin laser treatment. But the moment he placed the laser against the patient's skin, a sharp wave of electricity surged through his head. A sudden headache struck him. Then, something activated. A stream of data flooded his mind. Detailed diagrams, treatment procedures, and real-time analysis appeared right before his eyes, recommending the most effective method for treating the patient. Jang froze, then promptly fell out of his chair in shock. His assistant rushed over, worried. Meanwhile, Jang sat there completely stunned, staring at the floating information only he could see. His assistant looked at him like he'd just seen a ghost. And honestly, Jang was starting to think the same thing. Meanwhile, back at Yoonwook's massive research facility, chaos was unfolding. Yoonwook tried everything he could to restore Alfred, but no matter what he did, the system kept flashing one word: error. That's when the horrifying realization hit him. Alfred was gone. Not malfunctioning, not offline, but gone. Back at the clinic, Jang was still sitting on the floor, trying to process what had just happened. When he finally stood up, his assistants rushed over in concern, but Jang quickly brushed it off, claiming it was just a cramp in his leg. Then he excused himself to the restroom. Standing alone in front of the mirror, Jang stared at his reflection, completely baffled. He had intended to treat the patient using laser therapy to target the epidermis, but the strange system inside his head had recommended heat stimulation therapy. Curious, he quickly looked it up on PubMed, and to his shock, it was absolutely correct. Meanwhile, back in the treatment room, the patient was growing impatient. After all, her doctor had practically vanished mid-procedure. When Jang finally returned, he apologized and informed her that he would be adjusting the treatment plan. Fortunately, the patient was far more distracted by Jang's handsome face than the delay. Instant forgiveness. The power of good looks strikes again. Soon, the treatment was completed successfully, but Jang barely had time to process everything before his next patient arrived. A 49-year-old woman suffering from persistent facial flushing caused by menopause. As he examined her, something seemed off. There was a scar on her face that didn't quite fit the usual diagnosis. Jang paused, trying to determine the best course of treatment. Then it happened again. A sharp headache, and suddenly, the familiar interface appeared before his eyes. A floating message only he could see. High likelihood of HHT, a rare genetic disorder passed down through autosomal inheritance. Jang froze. He recognized the voice immediately. It was Alfred. Before he could dwell on it, the patient interrupted, and he continued the consultation. HHT was so rare that even experienced dermatologists often missed it. Jang began asking questions about symptoms associated with HHT. The woman was stunned. She had never mentioned any of those symptoms. So how could he possibly know? After confirming his suspicions, Jang immediately referred her to a university hospital. This wasn't something an ordinary dermatology clinic could handle. He also advised her to bring any family members who had reached puberty for screening, since the condition is hereditary. Though she left his office, she wasn't exactly thrilled. She had come expecting a quick laser treatment, not an unexpected medical lecture. But moments later, reality hit hard. She suddenly began bleeding heavily from her nose right there in the clinic. One of the classic symptoms of HHT, and the condition was no joke. HHT can cause arteriovenous malformations, and in severe cases, they can even force the heart into failure by disrupting normal blood flow. Back in his office, Jang sat silently, deep in thought. Without that mysterious voice, he never would have identified such a rare condition. Then it clicked. That voice. It was Alfred. To confirm his suspicion, Jang immediately called Yoon-wook and asked about the incident from the previous night. What Yoon-wook told him left him stunned. Alfred was gone, completely erased. Every trace of its data had vanished, as if it had never existed. Jang panicked. Was this somehow his fault? But Yoon-wook reassured him it wasn't. Though losing Alfred was heartbreaking, he insisted he could always build another one. That calmed Jang, at least for a moment. Then Yoon-wook casually asked about his mother, and suddenly, everything clicked into place. If Alfred could diagnose an incredibly rare disease like HHT, then maybe, just maybe, it could finally identify his mother's illness. Without another word, Jang abruptly ended the call. He changed clothes and rushed out of the clinic, his mind racing. Doctors had long suspected Parkinson's disease, but no one had ever been completely certain. But now, with Alfred's help, he might finally uncover the truth, and maybe, for the first time in years, he could actually save his mother. Jang hopped into a taxi and headed straight for Daehan University Hospital, where his mother had been receiving treatment. After the long ride, he finally arrived at the massive hospital. He stood outside the hospital, wondering how he was supposed to call out to Alfred. Then he remembered the way Yoon-wook had addressed the AI by name, so he decided to try it himself. At first, he simply whispered, "Alfred." Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. Unfortunately, anyone watching probably assumed he was either rehearsing for a play or arguing with invisible friends. Noticing the strange looks, Jang quickly improvised. He pulled out his phone and pretended to be on a call while continuing to speak. "Alfred, Alfred." Still no response. Then he remembered what Yoon-wook had said. Alfred's official name was Ronnie. The moment he said it, everything around him lit up. Ronnie activated. Jang nearly jumped out of his skin again. At this point, his heart deserved overtime pay. Before entering the hospital, Jang needed answers. He asked Ronnie if it was truly the same AI from Yoon-wook's lab. Ronnie confirmed it, but politely requested not to be called Alfred. It was Ronnie, always Ronnie. Jang then asked the obvious question: how on earth did an AI ended up inside his head? Ronnie explained that during the electrostatic discharge, it had traveled through an open network and integrated itself into Jang's neuroglial cells, the support cells that maintain the brain and spinal cord's chemical environment. Jang understood. Approximately none of that. But one thing was clear. Ronnie now existed inside him. Well, not exactly inside him. According to Ronnie, it was now part of his brain, which is either amazing or deeply concerning. Possibly both. Jang then got straight to the point. He was about to review a patient's MRI and wanted to know whether Ronnie could help diagnose it. Ronnie assured him it could as long as there was enough data. But on one condition: Jang must never tell anyone about Ronnie's existence, especially not Yi and Wook. Agreeing to the terms of what might be the strangest partnership in medical history, Jang entered the hospital. He introduced himself to the physician overseeing his mother's case. At first, the doctor didn't recognize him, but after a brief conversation, his memory returned. The last time they had met was 3 years earlier. He had expected Jang to be a third-year resident by now, but life had other plans. Due to family circumstances, Jang had been forced to leave his internship. He explained why he had come, and politely asked if he could review his mother's MRI scans from 3 years ago. The doctor understood immediately and agreed. Soon, they were seated in the diagnostic room. Jang could barely contain his excitement. As the doctor pulled up the scans, he explained that the images had always suggested Parkinson's disease, but the findings had never been entirely conclusive. Something about the scans simply didn't fit perfectly. That was when Jang activated Ronnie. Taking control of the mouse, he carefully scrolled through the MRI images. Then Ronnie spoke. Pause on the 4th image. Jang did exactly that. Ronnie began its analysis. It identified signs of pontine atrophy, and the classic hot cross-bun sign, a distinctive imaging pattern seen in certain. Jang immediately understood the significance. Seconds later, Ronnie delivered its conclusion. There was an 82% probability that his mother was suffering from multiple system atrophy (MSA), a rare and progressive neurological disease often mistaken for Parkinson's. Jang froze. Then, without hesitation, he explained the findings to the doctor. The physician was stunned, not only by the diagnosis itself, but by the fact that it was coming from a former intern. He asked Jang if he was absolutely certain. Truthfully, Jang wasn't, but he trusted Ronnie. As the doctor reviewed the MRI again, he began noticing the same features. Yet something else puzzled him. Recognizing the hot cross-bun sign required specialized knowledge on neurological radiology, field far beyond the expected expertise of an intern. So how had Jang identified it so quickly? Cornered, Jang improvised. He explained that ever since his mother fell ill, he had spent much of his free time studying neurology. It was an excuse, but not entirely a lie, because ever since losing his father and watching his mother suffer, Jang had dreamed of becoming the kind of doctor who could diagnose what others missed. 3 years ago, the diagnosis had pointed toward Parkinson's, but it was never confirmed. Now, things were different. To be absolutely sure, the doctor immediately contacted another specialist, Professor Kim. Still on the call, he sent over the MRI scans for a second opinion. Moments later, the confirmation came through. It wasn't Parkinson's. It was multiple system atrophy (MSA). The call ended, and the doctor turned to Jang with a smile, delivering the news. Jang bowed deeply, thanking him, but the doctor was lost in thought. This wasn't something an intern should be able to figure out so precisely. To him, it felt like a miracle born from desperation, relentless effort, and the son's determination to save his mother. With that, the meeting came to an end. Jang stepped out of the office and immediately spoke to Ronnie, asking the one question that truly mattered. Is there a cure? Ronnie's answer hit hard. There was currently no cure available on the market, but there was hope. Ronnie explained that researchers at Sungin University Hospital, in collaboration with the Codestem Corporation, were actively developing a treatment. They had already passed phase 2 of the proof of concept stage and were now in phase 2B, clinical trials. That meant the drug had already shown effectiveness, and its side effects had been evaluated. If phase 2B succeeded, the treatment could receive approval and be released to the public. For the first time in a long while, Jang felt hope, real hope. Without wasting another second, he rushed to his mother's hospital room. There she was lying quietly on the bed, Jang sat beside his mother, holding her hand as the machines hummed softly in the background. 4 years, all he had was uncertainty, pain, and helplessness. But now, for the first time, he had hope. A real diagnosis, a real path forward, and maybe a real chance to save her. Tears rolled down his face as he lowered his head, not out of weakness, but because the weight he had been carrying 4 years was finally lifting. Because this time, he wasn't going to lose someone he loves again. And deep within his mind, Ronnie remained silent, watching, calculating, waiting, because this was only the beginning.